All right, let's go back to George Stephanopoulos for the next
That's right,
round of
and
questions.
Josh, you said we'd be getting back to health care, and we will right now. Senator Brown, you brought up the Affordable Care Act a couple of times right now. Your opposition to it, well known. You say you want to replace it. But what do you say to the 40,000 New Hampshire residents who signed up for coverage, the 10,000 additional who have gotten coverage under the Medicaid expansion? Can you guarantee that those 50,000 New Hampshire citizens won't have any interruption in their coverage if you get your way?
Well, let's talk about the interruption of the 22,000 people whose insurance was canceled. We had a situation where Senator Shaheen and the President said, hey, if you like your plan, you like your hospital, you can keep it. You may even get a check for $2,500. We find out that that's not true. In addition, after the election, there's a potential of 70,000 other people about to lose their insurance as a result of the business mandate that's coming in after the election. We should have the ability to develop a plan that works for our state. It's been done in other states. We can address the catastrophic care, pre-existing condition, covering those people like you referred to, George, making sure that they don't fall through the system. To think that Obamacare is the only answer, it's not. Rates have gone up. Deductibles have gone sky high. Employees are paying more. Employers are paying more. We need to do it better. And I think that I remember when the President actually apologized for misrepresenting the entire Obamacare, especially not only the rollout, but the fact you couldn't keep your doctors in your hospitals. Senator Shaheen has never addressed it and or apologized to the citizens of New Hampshire.
But can you guarantee those citizens won't have
if
any
we all
interruption
work
in coverage?
together, George, I believe we can handle that situation. The governor, the legislature, the Senate majority leaders here, we can actually work together and develop a plan that works for New Hampshire. To think that Obamacare is the only answer, folks, it's a false premise. We can develop a plan that respects our rights and freedoms, that addresses the issues that people care about. What are the things that are important to you? You referenced two of them. I agree with that. So let's make sure we roll up our sleeves and get it done.
Senator Shaheen, I see you shaking your head. I know you wanted to answer that, but let me ask you a question on the same subject. The latest WMUR Granite State poll still shows a majority of New Hampshire citizens oppose the Affordable Care Act. When you've been asked about what kind of fixes you might make to it, you said you'd have an advisory commission for the website. No substantive fixes?
No, I've also said I think we should repeal the medical device tax. But the issue here is I believe everybody in New Hampshire should have access to quality, affordable health care. We passed legislation that now gives almost 100,000 residents in New Hampshire access to health care. The legislature passed a bipartisan bill to expand health care to 50,000 people who now have Medicaid. I talked to a realtor in Londonderry, a man named Steve White, who said that he couldn't get insurance because he had a pre-existing condition. Finally, his daughter talked him into signing up in the exchange in May. Not 3 months later, he had to have a quadruple bypass, and he said he would have faced financial ruin without health care. Well, what my opponent wants to do is to kick off those tens of thousands of people from their health care, and he doesn't have a plan to replace it. And rates are actually stabilized for the first time. Anthem sent out a notice that said rates are going up. They're actually stable for next year. We've got 4 new carriers coming into the exchange, and we need to fix what's not working about the law, but repealing it, kicking tens of thousands of people off their health care with no plan to replace it and years of indecision about what to do, that's not an answer.
Senator Brown.
She's like Nancy Pelosi. We have to pass it before we know what's in it. She didn't read the bill. Had she read the bill, she would have known that the medical device tax was in it. She voted for it anyway, and now she wants to fix it. My question is, what are you going to do with the billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars that hole is going to create as a result of repealing the medical device tax? There's no answer. The fix, she wants to have a commission, another commission in Washington to study a website that already costs $2.4 billion. I think our website costs $5,000 and is working quite well. She had a chance, by the way, to fix it. I was there. She voted against every single effort to keep your doctor, your hospital, to opt out. Every single time she voted against it, and to come now and be disingenuous with this is just wrong. We can develop a plan that works for New Hampshire, that respects our rights and freedoms, that allows us to have competition. Remember, when Senator was governor, she changed the laws in New Hampshire that actually went from 26 insurance companies down to 1. But guess what? After the election, we're going to have more. I don't believe it.
Senator Shaheen, why don't you answer that, and then we'll move on.
Well, my opponent's just wrong in terms of the cost of this law. We've already saved over $100 billion because of passing the Affordable Care Act. And what we've heard from CBO is if we repeal it, it's going to cost the debt over $1 trillion. The fact is it's working for those thousands of people who had pre-existing conditions who now can get health insurance, for people who no longer have to worry about annual or lifetime limits, for 26-year-olds who can stay on their parents' insurance, for people on Medicare who are getting help with prescription drugs and with preventive care. It's working. We need to fix what's not working about it. The medical device tax, as I said, is one thing that I think we should repeal. What I've suggested is that we need an independent overseer over the website to make sure that it's working properly, because that's been a real issue. But the answer is not to throw tens of thousands of people off their health care and have no plan to replace it. That's not an answer. To kick us back into a place where we're facing years before we've got any answer to how we're going to make sure that people get access to health care.